Well, welcome back to Small Changes, Big Shifts. I'm Dr. Michelle Robin here with my friend, Dr. Chris Ehly. And, we're rounding out this month. We've been talking about men's health, all from fitness, from nutrition, why men don't go to the doctor, how to take care of your spiritual well-being. And when Bailey and I were chatting about who would be a great guest to help us round out this month, I thought of my friend, Chris Ehly. And I'll just give you an informal bio. Chris is a dad. He's a wonderful physician. He's a friend. And Chris and I go back to, I want to say 90, is it 93 or 94, Chris? What year was it?
I'm thinking earlier, the earlier the better,
Yeah,
93.
93.
Mhm.
And I was pretty new in practice. And Dr. Chris, what year did you start practice as a family doctor?
I believe, Michelle, we met in right after I started, probably 91. I'll bet it was 91.
Well, I started in 92,
Yeah.
so I think it was maybe late 92, early 93. So sometimes our audience wonders, how do we come across people like this? And so a lot of times it's people that I read their books or I listen to a podcast. Other times it's people that I know in our community that I really respect, and they're some of my go-to people. And I've been super blessed. I have an amazing community in Kansas City, and Dr. Chris has been one of those go-to people for me. So, Dr. Chris, one thing we're talking about this month is men's health. What's your perspective on men's health, seeing as how you are a man and you see some men and you've been in healthcare for 3+ decades? What's your perspective on men's health? Is it getting better, getting worse, staying the same?
I think that in general, it's getting better because men are falling less prey to the stigma of not seeing a doctor, the masculine, I'm going to call it the reluctance to seek help. I see more men pursuing emotional health, and I think that can draw them into the clinic. It's not unusual to see that. And I think it wasn't long ago that that might have, to some extent, been verboten. And that then creates a nice segue into, well, not only should we be tending to that, but it gives us a great opportunity to initiate, routine screening measures, et cetera, overall wellness.
In medicine, it's shifting pretty fast. And, you started out in family practice and a group practice and got into another system and then another system. And then now you're in what's called a direct primary care practice. Talk a little bit about what's the difference between kind of traditional family practice in a group setting versus doing direct primary care.
In direct primary care, your patients are paying a fee, a monthly fee for all primary care needs, and I have nothing to do with insurance. And so that gives us both a great deal of freedom to pursue what's going on with them at a more personal level. I have tons more time because it gives me an opportunity to have a much smaller population. And that's the critical element, I think. Can only imagine the patients, the way you give your heart to your community and your patients. It gives me a little bit of a slow down time to provide that same kind of time, be a better listener, and be a better investigator as a function of that. Traditional medicine, I'm sad to leave that also in that you manage a much greater volume of people, and that's greatly needed. People can't get in to see their primary or any provider oftentimes, right? Sometimes for certainly at least weeks, if not months. And now I'm creating even more trouble with that by having a much smaller panel of patients, but it was continuing along that rut and burning out and quitting or continuing on and feeling like I'm making a better impact for fewer.
And I think we're similar in some areas. We're probably encoded to do this type of work, whatever it is. And I believe that probably by taking out some of the barriers, I quit taking insurance as well because I was working for the insurance company, not for I call them clients because patient means one who suffers. And I wasn't working for the client and I couldn't do it anymore. And I think you're the same way. I don't have a direct primary care where they pay a fee no matter what. They just pay fee for service. So tell me how you think it's changed the way you provide medicine.
I want to say my heart's always been in the same place. So I was wanting the same outcome, but when you don't have time, I think you honestly don't get the same outcome. You're not spending as much time listening. You're not spending as much time investigating. You're not pausing. Sometimes a lot of answers come in after the pause and in a need to move on to the next patient. That can be problematic.
Well, it's interesting saying that. And I think of a few things I've heard through the years. One is you pay as you go, your body sends you a big bill later, right? And so, have you heard that? You either pay as you go, your body sends you a big bill later.
That's great.
And by doing your direct primary care, you have these clients, these patients that are your people, and they can call you whenever they need to call you. At the same time, there's some responsibility on their other end, and I call it a partnership. I
Hmm.
believe that when we give people guidance or we educate them, the word chiropractor means laying of hands, and then educating them that there's a mutual respect of trying to help. My job is to help you get better, and your job is to help take some of the advice that you're paying me for, right?
Mhm,
You find
mhm.
that people are more compliant with the direct primary care model?
Huh. I think they're held more accountable. They can be held more accountable. And I have more tools. I can use more tools to show, I mean, give evidence of that accountability. And I can be more of a partner. I can make and create a scenario where I can have better follow-up with routine and they can ask questions. So I think that leads itself. But humans are humans, right? We are broken. And so much of our fundamental, we've talked a little bit about this, but fundamentally, we're not designed to be healthy in this current culture. We're designed to survive, absolutely be in a survival mode, in famine and without, to have a scarcity of resources. And with this abundance of resources, we still have these primitive brains that want to rest because we might have to chase something this afternoon. We might have to run from something this afternoon. So it's natural for us to not want to wake up and go jogging. And it's certainly not natural for us to not eat. If we have an opportunity for a little bit of food, particularly highly storable, high energy, pathetic food, why would we not eat that? That's ingrained in us. So I think it's funny to be caught in that evolutionary mismatch where we're designed to fail, I think, in this society. It is a lot of work, kind of to your earlier point. I mean, you have to put in a lot of time, a lot of work.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's interesting. I'm thinking about, well, watching you on your journey, and I'm sure you observe me too. So we've got this 3-decade friendship and mutual respect for the way we both practice. What would you tell your younger self? What would you say to that,
Mhm.
30-year-old self, or when we met originally in the 20s? What would you say?
I kind of avoid that question to myself because I want to say at every stage in my life, I've done the best that I could with what I knew and what I had. And therefore, I might have given 20% effort to something, but you know what? At that time, my 20% was my 100%. And
Mhm.
so I avoid bemoaning that so much that I'm not going to have a great question. Other than, I guess, now, if I knew all the things that I know, I certainly would probably be more aggressive about some of the things that I know are fundamental in being a healthy human being, and that being I'd eat more real food. I lived on Pop-Tarts and ice cream through high school. I wouldn't be alive today, as a matter of fact, if they didn't invent that, and Tang probably. So there are some data points that I have that I'd like to carry back. The importance of strength training, the importance of resistance training, and some of these things that compound over time and are critical for future health. But I didn't have those data points. And so I think I did okay at the time in my 30s, but with what I had.
So what do they say? When you know better, you do better.
There you go.
So speaking of knowing better and speaking to our wives, our sisters, our daughters, and to our male audience, what are some non-negotiables in your well-being journey now that you have implemented and you've given yourself grace?
Whole food, absolutely. Strength training, attention to sleep. You almost don't. It's scary to be anxious about sleep. That you're not sleeping well. So embrace the fact that you prioritize it and creating community, love and be loved. Those things would come to mind over anything, Michelle.
It's interesting. I've said this quote probably every week for 10 years or maybe 20. Confucius says, life is really simple. We insist on making it complicated. And what I heard you say, it's complicated yet because we're not designed to live in a time of abundance. Yet it's simple about building community. But some people, we struggle to build community because of our own belief systems or our own hiccups. And you said eat whole food and get some strength movement. And I think I heard you maybe say take care of your sleep. And, I've always been a pretty good sleeper and I just doubled down on it.
Mm.
I kind of went through about maybe a 10-year period where my sleep was on a scale of 1 to 10, instead of always being 10,
Oh gosh.
it's like a 7.5. And
Hmm.
I can't imagine the people that come in and say, you know what, I haven't slept great for 3 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can see why people walk around in a fog. We've got the men come in and the wives come in, and we probably have a similar proposition. I'm about 60-40, 60% women, about 40% men. And some of the wives or sisters or moms are concerned about their male children. What do you tell your son about his well-being?
I think one of the greatest parenting strategies is by example. I'm not sure that I tell them much of anything, but you show them that you're active and you prioritize, that you are conscientious of symptoms of depression and stay ahead of important elements of mental health, and that you prioritize wellness. That's the strategy. So it's almost as opposed to telling anybody to do something, that is what is it that you're doing? They follow your footsteps. I am so incredibly blessed to have, first off, by their healthy children. They haven't come into this world with disability. So, what a blessing that is. But then I have to admit, most of the stuff that they're doing today has a function of just what they observe. This is how you do stuff. It's sort of like telling you shouldn't smoke. Oh, yeah? Dad, you're smoking. I know, but it's bad for you. It's pretty, it has come quite naturally to my kids, I think. The degree of activity that I see them pursuing, their interest in being overall health, their alcohol use, etc. That's what I'd say.
They're walking the talk. So I think that's a great thing for our listeners to hear is kind of be the person that you're representing in the lifestyle that you want to create. Chris, I grew up around alcohol and moving a lot, and we weren't an active family. And so for some people, they may think, oh gosh, Michelle's got it easy because this is just what she does. I
Gosh.
believe that my soul picked the well-being and chiropractic space. So I'd be forced to walk the talk. So about the 5-letter F word called fraud. And so I love that you said that you gotta walk the talk, be the example. So I know it's hard for some people that have social anxiety, which a lot more people have these days, to get out and build community. If I came to you and I was one of your patients and I said, hey, Chris, I'm dealing with this social anxiety, and I imagine one of your words would be to talk about activity and stuff, and I'd say, you know what, I really don't have community and I'm lonely. What advice would you give me?
Oh gosh, Michelle, that's really difficult. I think I delve into your passions, because in creating that community, you're presume you're going to need to find like-minded people. Are you musical? Did you want to be musical? Do you dance? Did you want to dance? Are you a reader? Do you need to go back to school? Do you need to volunteer? What is it that who are you? Or who are the little people that are inside you, and how do we grab that one that really wants to help you out of that hole? I think I would start there because there you can, needless to say, give a long list. Oh, you need to go to my gym. Everybody's so nice there. Well, you're afraid to death of going into a space like that, and it's intimidating. And then our visit ends, and I'm waiting for you at the front door of my gym, and you never show up. But I think I'd be inclined to seek that. What is that passion, or what is that flame? And what a difficult predicament when you have anxiety, though, and depression symptoms, and you lose track of that passion. And so that would be the challenge. What are you missing? What are you looking for? What did you want at one point in time?
I think you answered that, just in perfect alignment with trying to figure out what gives you a little bit of joy in your heart. And like you said, it's sometimes that joy it gets buried. You got to try to pull off this layer and that layer and that layer and just kind of think about, oh my gosh, I'm in the joy when I'm playing with a dog, or I'm in the joy when I'm helping an elderly person, when I am playing pickleball, whatever the case may be. So I think that's a perfect answer to lead to my next question. There's so much to be said about all the things you should be testing. And, we both probably agree you can over-test. I think there's under-testing and I think there's over-testing. What are some screenings that, let's say, a male who's 40 should be getting versus a male who's 60?
Things start separating. A lot of it has to do with the individual and their what symptoms are they presenting with that could be alarming at a young age of 40, or their family history would dictate possibly augmentation in the regular screening measures. Cardiovascular screening should start the day you're born, I'm going to argue, and continues indefinitely. And that's the number one killer of us all is cardiovascular disease. So that has no limits, but we typically start our screening. For instance, colon cancer has been dropped down to 45 years of age. And there are various ways to screen for colon cancer. I like colonoscopy and the stool testing, Cologuard stool testing. Having said that, that's when we typically start the earliest screening measure, not until 45 years of age. And then at 50, other things start coming in, particularly prostate cancer screening. We do some lung cancer screening if somebody's smoked for 20 years, at least a pack of cigarettes a day. There's screening of abdominal aortic aneurysm around that time, also again on smoking history. There's a sundry of things, but most of that starts, as I mentioned, will start a little bit at 45 years of age, definitely at 50, but a lifetime of cardiovascular assessment. And then that gives us an opportunity to worry far more about mental health, body habitus, ability to move. It's easy to label maybe a death by a heart attack, et cetera, but really so much of that is related to immobility, lack of sleep, obesity, metabolic syndrome. There are so many things that you can be doing at age 30, that mitigates that. And I know, wellness is compounded, right? It's compounded. You can start at 80, and I encourage people to start at 80, but it is a hell of a lot easier when you start in your, well, teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and accumulate that.
Well, it's kind of like a checking account, you're just savings account. You're just the earlier you put it in, the longer, the more it grows and the faster it grows as you age. You may or may not remember this or know this, but my undergrad's in accounting. And so I've got a business degree in accounting. And, I always think about debits and credits. There's the things we do where we sit all day, where we debit our health. There's the things we do where we're negative and, look dialed into the negativity, or maybe scrolling on social doom too long, or, sitting there eating French fries and drinking a Diet Coke. Or instead of doing things like getting out and going for a move or turning the lights out I kind of have the lights out at 9:30 most of the time. I'm going to tell you the last few nights it's been 10 o'clock, but my house is usually 9:30 lights out because I usually get up about 5:30 to kind of get my day going. Don't need an alarm, unless I'm going to the airport, I set an alarm. Otherwise,
Oh,
I don't
that's
set an
awesome.
alarm. So I love that wisdom. I want to ask you just maybe one other question, maybe two, but I'm for sure this one. You brought up mental health a couple times. Tell me, how do you think people combat the noise in between their ears and the sadness in their heart? What advice do you give your people you serve?
Um, to find somebody to talk with, I mean, that's going to be critical. You can't live in that space alone. And who is that going to be? And that's a scary thing if people have difficulty reaching out and finding that safe space, that emotional safety to share how you're feeling. And I've been more often on regarding meditation, but the role of meditation is absolutely fascinating. When you read about very successful people in all walks of life, from plumbing to finance, invariably, that's a big part of their life is that the practice of meditation and mindfulness. And I try to encourage that in most all people that I see. I'm definitely, I shouldn't say fault, but I'm a horrible meditator. I'm constantly chasing squirrels. But that's the beauty of it, to understand that and be okay with that, and to rest kind of in this moment and realize I don't have to suffer in this moment. I can observe these things. It is my decision, I don't have to suffer that. What do you think?
First of all, I love that you put, I don't have to suffer. Maybe I choose not to suffer. Another way for me to look at it. Chris, I spend a ton of time taking care of my mental health. I always say if I wasn't a chiropractor, I'd probably be a minister. If I wasn't a
Mm.
minister, I'd probably be a travel agent, but or in marketing. I love trying to do things like that. But for me, I've added some new tools to my tool. Every year I'm adding new tools. And recently on the show, you brought up cardiovascular health. We had on Dr. Michelle Dew, who's a cardiologist at Advent, and then Jessica Love, who's a nurse practitioner cardiologist who happens to have joined your wellness connection. And she's been doing heart math. And so I started doing heart math with her recently, where I'm trying to get my heart and my brain in coherence and
Mhm.
kind of measuring that. Oddly enough, Chris, you know what raises my coherence the most?
Hmm.
My puppies.
Ah. I'll
I
bet
remember
it
I
is.
remember a time a few years ago when I had my dog Skylar alive. I went down to Florida. Crystal was with Skylar down in Florida with some friends, and I remember walking in the door, and the dog was so excited to see me, and probably like parents with kids. She was running around crazy, crying, just
Yeah.
talking to me. And she'd never done that before quite like that. And when I think about that, when I'm measuring my coherence, it raises my peace level up. I've got a new little dog, River. I've had her about a year. And I just think about the joy. And so for me, Chris, I'm focusing on what can bring me joy. And I'm also trying to really remember that the things that I think are bad today are probably minimal. I probably catastrophize some things. I've added that a heart map to my tool. I do chase squirrels. I'm a good person at chasing squirrels. So I like an 11-minute meditation where it just tells your body thank you. I think so many times it's easy to see what's not working, that you see what is working in your life, probably like any relationship. I can
Hmm.
pick on, I was having a conversation with my team recently. I was getting ready to leave town. I said, and I've got a couple perfectionists. Speaking of Bailey, who's not here, Bailey, my co-host, I told her today, I said, I really want to talk to Chris. This is the time that we could do it. So you go do your wedding stuff. I'm going to talk to Chris. And I said, by the way, remember, there's a lot working at your wellness connection, not small changes, big shifts. We pick on the things that aren't working, the few things that aren't working, and we blow those up. So just remember, a lot of things are working. Be grateful for those. And so this meditation gives you a chance to tell your body thank you. I'm glad you kept bringing up mental health because I heard you, and that is. I know that when I am thinking right, I do the exercise, I make a better choice about what I'm putting in my body.
On that mental health note, I wanted to comment because I make it sound um, like a soft problem, but men have a propensity to not be soft in depression. They're much more external and less internal. And so to be angry, to be aggressive, to be risk-taking, to abuse substances, alcohol being the number one. I mean, we're talking about men and a darker side, but it's interesting versus to be withdrawn, to be tearful, to avoid, and that's perceptible. It may seem to be okay if you're angry, you must be fine with yourself, when indeed there's a lot of hurt.
So if you're coaching me as a female practitioner, and what's a great question I would ask? Let's say that you were one of my male patients or my clients. What would be a question I could ask you to get you to divulge that and be more authentic or more vulnerable with me on that? What would be a question I would ask you?
I don't know if this is effective or not, Michelle, but I'll ask people about stress because we can have stress. We can't be depressed. We can't have anxiety. I can't be weak, but I can be stressed. And so that's how I approach it. And I don't know if that's a secret sauce or not, because I try and get a little bit of a nibble on that and then I hunker down. What about your marriage? What about is going on with the kids? What about your aunt that has blah, blah, blah? I think it's a pretty effective segue to chip at I guess, a term that's acceptable. I can, right? Does that make sense? I have no problem being stressed out. I'm not going to tell you I'm depressed, but I'm certainly stressed.
I love that question. There's a couple questions I like to ask. One is, tell me something that's stressing you out. And
Uh,
because everybody's got something, right?
yeah.
And then you can kind of tell the level, degree, and not in a judgment way, but kind of what's going on. And here's my follow-up question. Tell me something good today. Some people come and I'll say, tell me something good that's going on today. And I won't ask it that day. They'll be like, wait, I've got an answer for you today. Ask me the question. I'm like, what question? I like to end on that question, Chris, in my initial visit. So it's kind of a roller coaster ride. And I say, I got two final questions for you. If you feel comfortable answering them, and it would be, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life? And that just kind of gives me kind of some realness. And then I immediately follow up with, what's the best thing in your life? And it helps me, I kind of get through layers of me against you and that we're in this together like that. And those are the two questions that I have found effective over the years. Chris, I'm just going to brag on you for a minute to our listeners. If our listeners want to find out more about you, Chris is in the Metro Kansas City area. If you didn't catch at the beginning, what's your website? How could they maybe learn more about your direct primary care practice?
Well, that's so kind, and I'm embarrassed that I've kind of let it run fallow. I have a full clinic and I do have a website, but my website happens to be ehlyprimarycare.com. And at any rate, that's where I sort of hang out, but quietly now.
So to recap what you just said, It's Ehly, Ehly, primarycare.com. He's got a full practice, maybe a little bit of a wait list. So I'm sure somebody falls out once in a while. And if you get a chance to have somebody like Chris on your, I call it wheel of support. We all need, in my opinion, a good chiropractor, a good massage therapist, acupuncturist. If you're like me, you have 2 or 3 of each. Then you have a good primary care, maybe a cardiologist, and a good counselor. Of course, a lot of great friends and a good pet, good family. All those people help you move through life. And so if you've never considered primary care as a direct primary care model and you can afford to do that, what's kind of if somebody wanted to kind of think about that, what's the going rate for monthly? Is it $200 a month, $300 a month?
Yes. Yes, it's about $200 a month. However, throughout the city, there's considerable variability, and it's very common to find direct primary care at $65 a month, and they'll have a larger volume of patients, but you can have far better and more immediate access to care. And then it can certainly get more expensive than that, and some specialists are starting to get involved as well,
Yeah,
pulling
so
it.
go anywhere from 65 to, one of my friends is $500 a month who's, takes a very limited panel and very
Mhm.
specialized and sick and people that are pretty sick. So if
Mhm.
you get a chance, I know that the healthcare system's a little bit of a mess and you're thinking, gosh, how do I navigate this? Whether it's, like I said, Dr. Chris has a full panel and you can reach out to me, I can connect you, but I would consider adding somebody like a Dr. Chris on your Wheel of Support team to just, especially if you have a family, so you have access to care with somebody who really cares about you. Chris, one thing I've loved about you from the minute of meeting you in a parking lot in Birkenstocks, I'll never forget that, is your warm heart and your inquisitiveness about wanting to feel you as a human, always wanted to do better for yourself and for the people you serve. So I'm delighted you joined me today on Small Changes, Big Shifts. To our listeners, thank you for showing up. Bailey will be back with me next week. I'm so grateful for you joining us on the series. We've been on a roller coaster with a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, an almost 50-year-old, and now maybe somebody that's a little bit older than 50. We do the math and we've known each other for 30 plus years, that we're both out of the 50s. So Dr. Chris, I love you. I see you. I appreciate you. And to our listeners, if you found the show helpful, please share it with friends. And we always would take your reviews. Blessings to all of you. Have a wonderful day.